Hello and welcome. This is Corey Angelat. Welcome to the End of Slavery Summit. I am here with Connie, a very special friend of mine who has a lot of energy, who's very happy and energetic all the time, which I really appreciate because the world could use more of that energy. She's laughing right now why I said that, but she's got a lot of skills and expertise, especially in the schooling system, which we can get into. Everything from survival skills to the arts, which we've talked about before, her and myself, theater and everything like that, how we can raise children properly, nutrition, brain challenges, and physical activity, and unschooling, not just homeschooling and self directed learning. It's a very important topic that not a lot of people tend to look at, but like at a very young age, it's very important we look at that young age because they're going to grow up into the world and they're going to bring with them so many great ideas and many actions that if we are not aware of what those actions are doing, we might create a world scenario that we may not want. So we have to be conscious and we have to have conscious parenting, essentially. So, Connie, how about you introduce that whole spiel to us and introduce a bit about yourself?
Oh, hello everyone. Hello. I am energetic. I don't know why, but I work with children a lot. I work with children and I work in theater, so I work with fantasy, and then I work with reality with children. You
There you
dance
go.
between reality and fantasy, and it just somehow keeps your energy going. And because it is such the whole child, working with the whole child, it's very exciting, and they're wonderful children and young adults and teens, and they're all wonderful. Well, some would say, oh, the challenges with teens. Well, if you like them, they like you. You really need to love what you're doing. So I have been doing it since the age of 12. I was in my father's day camp in Los Angeles. He had a wonderful day camp called Swim and Sun Day Camp, and I was a counselor at 12. So I got a lot of responsibility. I worked with children then and just have loved it ever since. And Corey mentioned self-directed learning, and that is a lot of what happens with homeschooling, although it also happens in the classroom, in the government schools, private schools, and so on. There's all sorts of learning that takes place, concept-based, group-based, cooperative learning, interactive, intraactive, all sorts of types of learning. But most students are active or kinesthetic, visual, verbal learners. They're not auditory learners. They can't really sit and just take in information and just sit there for long periods of time. And it seems to me that that's still going on in our government schools. So that changes once you start homeschooling because you have so much opportunity to let's get up and let's act this out, or let's get up and let's explore outside, you got to get those children moving. They were not meant to be sitting long periods. I'm supposed to talk about, I believe, what I do and also so many things. But right now, I'm not teaching. I haven't taught for 2 years because I refuse to mask and I refuse to vax and all that. So I haven't really gotten a lot of work, and yet I'm in a state that is I would say it's not the most free state in the world. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to talk about the state I'm in, state of confusion. But I have not taught, I have not acted because the theaters in my state are demanding a vax
Wow.
ID to audition for a show
My
from
gosh.
highly professional to the community theater. So I will have to start my own group, my own theater group called the Pure Blood Players or something. I don't know what I'll call them. But those of us that don't believe in that sort of thing and we want to keep our temple as it is without infringement, you know what's going on. Everyone knows. So um, I have. I'm still not out of practice. I have 30 years of, maybe more, maybe 40 years of experience as a teacher and a camp counselor, which is a blast. All kids should go to camp at least once. It's really so fun. And I had wonderful summers as a young girl, and uh, and my dad had a camp for about 10 years, and then I started working in other camps in the high Sierras because I was raised in Southern California, and I had experience with camps on the coast and interior as well, fun stuff. But then in the government schools, I was there many years as a drama teacher, speech teacher, English teacher, 10th grade English, as well as fifth and sixth. I taught at the elementary level, the middle school level, the high school level, all over a district that I had tenure in. And I don't believe in tenure actually, but they still, it's still going on. I believe that teachers, if they like the Finnish model in Finland, I believe in hiring great teachers off the top, which in Finland, that's the Finland model. And that's a whole different discussion, Corey, on what Finland does, because real quickly, they don't expect children to read until the age of 8, and they give them a lot of room to move, a lot of creativity,
Wow.
freedom, and it's a little bit Waldorfian in that way. If people know what Waldorf is, there's a lot of freedom there, but with license, you have to pull them back. I've been called in to help to what is the word? Give the theater group at a Waldorf school some discipline because they were just going off, bouncing off the walls. Because I think the Waldorf teacher didn't, she hadn't had instruction how to engage them without yelling, of course, how to engage kids visually and make them excited about what they're doing, so they don't act up and change the rehearsal so that you're rehearsing, I don't know, Rent instead of Music Man. So
Hmm.
you have to motivate them, you have to engage them, and that's what a lot of teachers in our government schools don't do. They say, here's the book, there's the worksheet, get busy. When in fact, there's all kinds of colorful physical things you can do to get them into a lesson and get them excited about, like Lexington and Concord. I had some kids just throwing marshmallows at each other. They got to have one when they were all done. But instead of bullets, they were throwing marshmallows. And they always remembered the Lexington Concord, marshmallow fight, which it really wasn't. It was a, battle between the redcoats and the Minutemen, or, the factions that were fighting. Now we're not sure we even know the truth about what's happened. We're
Right.
going to find out more as time goes on. So you have to get them physically involved. And so I've been doing that. I'm also a theater director and an actress. And so I believe in being physical on stage, and also I love comedy of wit where you're working with words. I love words. I'm a writing teacher. So all of these things all these things are in every student, and you have to expand them. When you see that a student is doing something amazing, you need to encourage them, and really just observe that, catch that, and then get them moving on that. Because my brother was an artist as a young man, and his teachers did not see it. I saw it.
Wow.
But now he's a plumber and he's struggling a bit. Uh, and that could have been a huge creative outlet for him had someone caught that. You got to
Yeah.
really, even though you're given 30 students, you really have to catch what their talents are and really help them, push them forward. So, as I say, right now I'm kind of helping a family out in the country, and in a particular area, and getting the house ready for possible, I don't know, anything that could happen. We don't really know. It's a time of uncertainty. And so I have a lot of homestead skills, and I believe in that. And that's the lost ways. That's what we have to relearn,
Right.
and foraging and herbs and, regular remedies that are not pharmaceutical. I'm studying a lot of different things. So I'm getting this family ready, and then I'll maybe go to another family and help them get ready. I just
Oh,
like to
wow.
get people prepped, and
That's
ready
great.
for whatever. So they feel,
Yeah.
you know, because I'm not working as a teacher or an actress right now in this particular.
Yeah. Well, you're still teaching, you're still doing something, and that's what matters. And I feel like everybody could be a teacher, right? Like, or at least teach somebody in some regards. Everybody should be, because everybody has something to share.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And all parents can be homeschool teachers, all parents. I mean,
Yeah.
whether they are plumbers or, motel maids or whatever, they can teach their children because the curriculum is out there. You look at it, you get a few little instructions on how to do it. Because I really do believe, Corey, that no children should be in government schools until they're reformed, until there is major reform. And we've been pushing for it. Teachers have been pushing for it for years, for decades, and we keep getting stopped by the administration. And why is
Yeah.
that? I mean, we go into a whole discussion. Why is the administration stopping reform? Because they want efficiency, and they get paid for every little bottom that's in every little seat, and they want to keep that going. And if we make our classroom smaller with 12 to 16 students, which is the ideal, then their money will diminish. I really don't know. I remember one principal would sit in his office and just do budgets all day, so you could
Hmm.
see where his head was at. And I had another principal in a government school who would run around with his squirt gun on Fridays and squirt the teachers in the classroom in our
What?
last part of the day, he'd give us a squirt at the door, and the kids would just love it, and it would just be a riot. It's very, very, undignified, but the kids had a light feeling when they left the school. And there's all. the principal sets the tone, for the school. So what I'm saying is there's so much reform needed. It's got to
Yeah.
happen rather quickly, or I think that the enrollment coming up in the fall is going to be really cut in half. I really feel like it's going to be cut in half. And I say more power to it. There's so much good curriculum that's not difficult for any parent who it just takes 4 hours a day, maybe 3 or 4 hours a day, and then hire a teacher, perhaps a teacher like me who's out there and put a pod together in your neighborhood and maybe 3 or 4, 5 hours a day in different homes of each child. I mean, there's all kinds of possibilities and all sorts of resources out there. You just have to hunt for them.
Yeah, and like a lot of topics that you just mentioned, like just now, like natural medicine, sort of prepping, morality, asking questions. I mean, these are things I don't see in the school system. And like you said, like everywhere, because I've met with like Moms for Liberty and different groups around the country who are trying to change the school system. They realize the whole system is corrupt. It's not even like one level, it's like all of it. And it's like, how much are they battling until they just have to say, well, let's just take our kids out and make our own? Because isn't that the more natural way to learn in the first place, is to have a localized, more individualized type of learning?
Well, we've seen you could drive by them. They're these huge bunkers called high schools and middle schools, and there's a big giant cement bunker, and they've got 3,000 in some of these high schools, which it only should be
Wow.
200 in every school, 200 to 300 in every school, so that students get to know each other. Because I've seen so many students alone, eating lunch alone at the high school level. And I always talk to them and I say, and they're all just kind of, they haven't made their friends yet. They haven't found their little clique or whatever. And you go from many cliques. I was in many cliques when I was in school. So, but that's because it was so big. You want to feel like you belong, and it's too big. It's not easy. So, it's a craft, it's a talent, it's an art form, good teaching, and it's a calling. You cannot just say, oh, I'm going to make a whole lot of money as a teacher. It's a calling, Corey. Same as nursing is a calling, because you've got a lot of nurses who should not be in there. No offense, we need every nurse we can get, I guess. So what I'm saying is that yeah, these schools are too big, and it's got to be it's too much of a factory. It's that same factory feel that people have been getting in the hospitals lately, that it's a factory.
Hmm.
And you get that now in the high schools. And where I am, there was a lot of posters on the walls that had to do with LGBT and immigration. And I
Yeah.
see the usual posters with the heroes of supposed heroes of our world. I didn't see those anymore. It was very different. Things changed
Yeah.
in the last 10 years, so that I did get in trouble with my particular district by for telling the children the truth about a particular political figure. They kept asking me. I was subbing at the time, and I got into trouble with that. And I went into what's called a Loudermill meeting, where I was, told not to do this anymore. And, but I said I was just telling the truth, and they didn't like that at all. And so I had two of those, and then I just resigned, because the Loudermill kind of says, you better shape up or we're going to fire you. Whereas you don't want that. You want to resign if you're going to have to be
So
intimidated.
how long were you teaching, for people who don't know? Because I don't think you mentioned like how many years you've been doing this and trying your
30,
best.
about 30 years, let's see, 26 years, full time, part time to full time. It fluctuated because I had a child, but 26 years, 10th grade English, theater, or excuse me, theater arts and English, 6th through 11th grade, and then some 5th and 6th as well, maybe a year or two of that with social studies and English. So it's about 26, but all in all, about 35 years, because I'm a theater specialist and I go into schools as a visiting artist. And I also teach for the Parks Department, for YMCA, and for different venues. And I can also create my own classes by getting a space and opening a performing arts conservatory. I mean, there's all possibilities if you keep your mind open and creative toward that. So
Interesting.
yeah.
I would like
Um,
to get into teaching myself. I mean, I don't know how to get involved. It's like if you don't have a degree, it's like, well, can you really teach?
yeah,
I mean,
you
I'm
can get
teaching
a space.
online, kind of.
No, well, Corey, you can get a space, any space, and sometimes I will go first to venues that look safe and interesting, and then I'll go to churches, and there'll be rooms in there, and you just see what their rental is. Churches charge very little per hour compared to other venues, and they will look at your credentials. They will say, well, what background do you have? And you'll tell them that, what your background is, which is probably a good background. And they will say, well, sounds good. You've worked with children. Or if you don't want to start that way, if you haven't worked with children enough, then you can assist someone doing that by asking around. I guess I've never assisted, so I don't know who to ask, but you would ask someone like me who's creating a class somewhere, who actually is working with children, and say, can I assist in some way? I'd like to get some
Hmm.
more experience. And then once you do that, a couple sessions, you're ready to roll with your own classes. You can set your price. I'm going into the business end of working for Parks Department, but it's usually a 60-40 split. You get the 60, or actually nowadays it's 70-30 split. You get the 70, and you'll get five or eight. You'll need about 8 to 10 students for the energy that you need. You don't want to have just 2 or 3 students. So you'll say my minimum is 8, my maximum is 25, and after 25 you'll get an assistant, a high school person, a college person, or someone to assist. And then it goes from there, and you can design, you write up a proposal for anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks of classes, whatever. I have a proposal for a performing arts class that is toward creating public speakers, so that I use theater games and speech exercises and games to create good public speaking people who like to speak. And that does require performance. And so there's all, I would say there's anything's possible, anything. And that's what I tell kids, that you are what you think you are. I say that sometimes a couple times a day. uh, and you can create anything if you are motivated and pushed enough and self-motivated. I just never say that, oh, you better accept your lot in life. I heard somebody say that to a little
Yeah.
girl. Yeah, I hope you accept your lot in life. Anything's possible. You can never accept your lot in life. There is none. There's too many possibilities. So I'm
Yeah.
into positive teaching and positive education, but I don't like the impersonal aspect of the government schools and the fact that we're not sure we're getting curriculum that is absolutely truthful. Some of these books and some of these textbooks are written by questionable groups. They're not all Harcourt, and we're not sure Harcourt is a great publisher and tells the truth. I mean, we're really finding out a lot of new information now. So you want to have control over that as a parent and teach virtues. And by the way, they do teach some virtues at the elementary level, but they kind of stop after that. And kids really need them in the middle school to remind them about being kind and understanding. And
Right.
I
Oh, but
mean, not
it's too
to be,
simple. It's too common. Like, no.
yeah, but we don't want to be so tolerant that we're tolerating anything. Like, yeah,
Right.
I mean, okay, so if I was in an improv class where, now I know this is controversial, Corey, but a guy walked in. It was obviously a guy, and his name was Cheryl. And he told the instructor, who was a very experienced improvisational teacher, I'm Cheryl. And the teacher said, okay, that's fine. And we started to get into it. And it was hard for me to take the class. I finally left a little bit early because I just felt like we're supposed to be telling the truth here as actors on stage. And it's not happening over here with Cheryl because, well, Cheryl is not normally a guy's name, and this is obviously a guy. And so that whole tranny thing was beginning. This was about 7 or 8 years ago. That whole total acceptance and PC acceptance of whatever. And we just can't. It's not in our genes or something to accept fraud. And once we accept that fraud, we can accept the fraud from the government, the
Hmm.
fraud from the
You're saying,
schools.
like, if our nature is questioned, then everything's that question. I see
Yeah,
what you're saying.
and I like George Carlin saying we have to question everything because
Yes.
where's the evidence? And I study law. I study law a lot the last 6 years, and I need evidence. And and there's a biological difference thing going on that's still there. So that's a whole other discussion. But we want to teach kids to question and to ask
Yes.
polite questions, and even how to talk to police officers politely, but with questions that are important. I teach kids how to talk to cops. I got in trouble one day for that in middle school. I was subbing, but I was just passing the time and telling them to be polite. But I do think it's extremely important, and so important that parents should do it themselves unless they feel they really can't and their heart's not in it. And they can hire someone like myself to come in and do a pod for a neighborhood, or there's probably parochial schools. Private schools have been infiltrated a little bit with the same indoctrination I'm finding. So I'm finding some private schools are like government schools, but they're not as big, they're smaller classes.
Yeah.
But we have to pay attention to each and every student, and they've each got a story that's really deep and all encompassing. And how do we do that? And with all that we're supposed to do psychologically, we're supposed to be their counselor and also line up perfect lessons and also get ready for the next 2 weeks and then talk to the parents. And I had one parent at a very wealthy high school emailing me every day, how's my student doing, how's my student. And I said, well, it's only just the first couple of weeks. Just let's give it a little time. And I was very patient with 5 parents that were emailing me every day at one of these high-end high schools. And things turned out well, but other teachers might not have been, that patient. But it is a pressure cooker because I did have students just thank me all over the place for not giving them a final at one school in Southern California, in a very wealthy area. They said, "Oh, now I can study for my French and I can study for my Latin test." And I said, "You guys have been tested every 6 weeks all along. I'm not going to give you a final." And boy, did I get it from the administration. They said, "Thank you. You can not come back next year. Thank you." So, I was a little out of the
Yeah,
scope
but
of
you're
what.
listening to the students. I mean, you're actually looking at what they want, what they need. I mean, and you're a teacher, right? I mean, what are the is the administration, are they teachers necessarily? Or
Not always. No,
yeah.
the kids were so grateful, and yet I was seen by the administration as not doing my job and that sort of thing. But the kids were tested. They don't need a final. I don't think anybody should take finals. I mean, I think they should be tested every 6 weeks, and because we retain a lot, but we don't retain an entire year or at least a half a year. So it wasn't realistic. It wasn't logical.
So, and I know you mentioned before, it's like, there, and I think I like the idea of, teaching how to think rather than what to think. um, but, there's that creativity in school, which I think should be there, right? Like you said, kind of invoking that creativity out of the student or out of the child, the inner child, if you will. The schools that I am accustomed to, that I've seen, look like prisons, and I don't think that's normal. I feel like that within itself could be creative. There's a lot of things that can change. Like, even if they were talking about former presidents or whatever in history, even that to me is not enough, because I think creativity is important, the most important when it comes to learning, or at least getting those more spiritual principles in, such as independence and freedom, which of course I think the number one thing that I see in the school system is obedience, and a lot of people see this. I don't think I'm the only one. Stay in line, do what you're told, and I don't know if that's supposed to be the right
No, not
model
even
for
in
teaching.
elementary. I don't even think that should happen in elementary school because I see them all walking with their hands behind their backs and because I've subbed at the elementary level and they're walking down the hall and they're all well behaved, but they will be well behaved if you treat them well, you give them some freedom and yet with some responsibility and that they're excited to go where they're going and maybe a little bit of reward once in a while. I'm not big on the reward thing because it kills the innate love that we have for something sometimes with too much reward. But yeah, there's too much of that. And I have also told children, please don't even ask me if you need to go to the bathroom. Just give me the high sign that you're going and go. And I expect you to come back in a couple of minutes. And they usually do come back in a couple of minutes, but they always say, can I go to the bathroom? I don't want anybody asking me if they can go to the bathroom. I'm so different that way. Just, or they take some at the high school level, they give them some of these teachers would give them the ring on the potty, the potty ring that's on to carry that down the hall. So to be sure that they'll come back. I mean, it's just all wrong. There's a lot of things wrong. And
Hmm.
so the right people have to sit around and do some real brainstorming. But we run up against a wall with, as you know, these boards of education and administrators. And the teachers could take the administrative part. I do believe a teacher would, if he or she had a period free, could take the administrative side and do some of the paperwork and whatnot for that period. I mean, we could. We don't need to have as many high paid administrators, very high paid. And when you offer a lot of money for something, like look at our doctors right now. We have a lot of doctors, very high paid, and they went into it for the money. And what's it brought us? It's brought us people who shouldn't be in it. So there's that issue going on. But
Good point.
teachers could take over the administration of a school if it was a smaller school. It can't be a 3,000 kid school anymore. We can't have those those
Yeah.
entries.
So,
And
if you don't mind me asking, because I think there's some people who might be genuinely curious, including myself, when if I'm gonna have kids in my future or what have you, or at least I would hope. To be honest,
oh
I
yeah,
don't
you
know.
know.
Like in today's world, like people are like, I don't want to have kids, but like that
Oh,
doesn't really help the situation because you kind of need to have kids if you're going to continue this world and
probably.
spread the ideas. But anyways,
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
eh, but anyways, if let's say a parent is curious and they're like, yeah, I want to homeschool, but where do I start? Like you said, there's resources they can research. Do you have any like specific resources that you can recommend to parents?
Well, there is this one. Well, Dr. Pam Popper. She has a good website for Make America Free Again that has a whole section where you can go to look up various curriculum, and some of it might be Christian oriented, some might be non-Christian or not non-Christian, but whatever that would be called, or without that particular biblical, deal. I'm not highly religious. I just think
Right.
God is nature, and that's in nature. Babies and animals. It's all nature and God. But so I have many. I'm Jewish and pagan, and so I think that parents can. All they have to do is type it in, do a little bit of research. There used to be the Robinson curriculum, and I was about to buy that. That was only $250. It was out of on the West Coast near Santa Cruz. There was a gentleman, Mr. or Dr. Robinson. It was mostly it was Christian oriented, but it was very inexpensive, and it was his research on. And that doesn't seem like 250 would not be the total. That would probably be a couple of levels. So there is some money involved, but there's a lot of free curriculum, a lot that is accurate and good free curriculum. But you have to look for it. I don't have one source to go to. There's so many.
Yeah.
So it takes some research. Inexpensive curriculum at the middle school level, and look for that and see what comes up and start reading about it. It does take some legwork, or hire a teacher to do that for you. I worked with a family out in farther country than this, and they wanted me to put she was 10th grade. They wanted me to get the curriculum. I did that. I did the research. The curriculum came in the mail. We looked at it. We got started. I was with her for several months with doing the learning, but she really needed more socialization. So I got her involved in, she needed some other students around her. So
Right.
she got into dance, and then she got into some martial arts. She got into gymnastics, so that it was a real holistic,
Oh,
fun
nice.
experience. Because she was on her own. Had she had brothers or sisters with her, it might have been a little more fun to do the learning. It's always fun, but a lot of some other kids around is good, and also some other extracurricular things you need to also get those together. But it's not expensive, and it just takes time, and it takes being motivated to give your child the best education possible. Or you can hire someone to do it. So
You
all of
can
it's
hire
possible.
someone? So,
You can
like
hire a teacher, who knows what she's doing, and you can hire her through. Oh gosh, you can put an ad on Craigslist. Put an ad in the neighbor. I think it's called Next Door. Next Door is another means to find people who know other people. Um, Gosh, you can go to the colleges and call up the Department of Education at UC Berkeley and say, who just graduated, or can you just give them my number? I'm looking for a young teacher to work with my child in a homeschool situation. I will pay
wow.
them so much, and just there's so much. It's all possible. But parents that put their child into the government schools this fall, are taking a big risk, because we really don't know. Uh, there are a lot of teachers that got in that were told they could push their agenda, and they could get everything paid for as far as their education if they push this particular agenda, which is, what it is, and they would get through, and they would have a 30 to $45,000 as the average to start as a teacher. Now that would attract some people who are like gung ho for their agenda, but it's not working with kids, with young people, and it's not interest in social studies and writing and math and science. It's a whole different wrong thing, wrong way to go. But this is what the particular groups that I'm alluding to have done. And so you're taking a big risk, especially at the elementary level, because they are introducing in several states at the kindergarten level, how to do this sexually at the kindergarten level. I mean, absolute insanity is happening. And if you don't see it, I'm so sorry, but your child will be impacted and possibly emotionally traumatized. And I know it will be bad for them. So I think all parents should pull their children and then give the government schools a lesson that we're not interested in your baloney anymore. And we want something that's really going to help our children to thrive and have classical education. I mean, that's a whole other discussion. Classical education involves philosophy and humanities. And I
Yeah,
mean,
the trivium.
there's all sorts of ways you can
Yeah.
learn. And they have chosen they got infiltrated, basically. I think the unions got infiltrated by certain groups. That's what I'm seeing. And so, well, all we can do is wait and see and keep urging parents to get involved, to know what their child
Yeah.
is.
Well, like it helps us in so many ways for people to localize and make home schools, not just to take the money out of the centralized system of slavery, but to create freedom in so many aspects of health and awareness. It's just across the board. You see, it's so helpful for people that this is such an important aspect you can't leave out. There's so many parents that I talk to, and they'll say, "Well, oh, I'll put them in the school system, but when they come home, I'll make sure to give them, my perspective and to share with them." And like, I'm like, okay, I mean, you're kind of giving them a filter, but it doesn't help to have like an influence that is not going to be helpful for them. But then they're like, well, because I don't have enough time. I don't have enough time to do homeschooling to help them. And because they have to work, and now like both parents are working in the household, it's not just one parent. So it's a little tricky.
It is
Um,
very tricky. It's very tricky, and they're right in all that they say because it's from the heart, I'm sure. But 3 hours a day from the parent, I don't think that's a lot to ask. 3 hours, and then maybe hire someone to do another 3 hours a day,
that's
or
right.
get involved in a pod,
That's
or
true.
go to a magnet school, or they have different names, but go to just look around your area and see what you can find, and or create it with other parents because you
That's what I
really have
said
to.
to my mom. I said to my mom, I was like, no, because I was talking to her about the other moms and what they are doing with their children, right? And I'm like this is your child. Don't you want your child to like be the best, like to always be with you, have like time? Like, why would you not want to educate your own child?
You're
Like to
very
me,
precocious.
it just feels like you have to do that because it's natural. Like in the wild or in nature, like you wouldn't like leave your child with some
My daughter, yeah,
strangers.
yes. I regret that I was too busy teaching and directing to do that with my daughter. I really do. She's a nurse now, but there is some alienation there, and I'm sure it is because of not having that bonding part that you're bonded when you give birth to a beautiful child, and there's a bonding that will always be there that not everybody can see, but it's there. But I didn't bond enough as a teacher to my child. I really should have done that, and I didn't have to work. Really, I could have really just worked very, very part time, and I did work part time a lot of years and spent a lot of time with her. Oh yeah, a lot of time. But seems like it wasn't enough, So you are correct. That builds a huge bond when you teach them. And I was with one family in Florida. She was teaching her 13-year-old daughter while I was doing some housekeeping and cooking for the family. But they got into it once in a while. They would argue, the 13-year-old and the fully grown mom. They would not big knockdown fights, but they would, discuss in a heated way sometimes. And then they would fix it and they would patch it. And that's what you have to learn too, is how to get through discussions and have disagreements and learn how to get along and come to a
Yeah. It's probably
cooperative.
easier if you start really early on rather than like take your kid out of the school system abruptly, and it's got
Yeah.
to be more
Although,
transitioning.
although I would say do it anyway. I would say even if it's abrupt, right now is so strange that it, even if it's abrupt, just do it, because
Yeah.
I wouldn't feel hesitant about that, because you can, and they'll love it. They go, what? I don't have to go to school? There'll be a lot of kids going, you mean you're going to be my teacher? Oh man, that's going to be so easy. You're such a pushover. You'll say, no, we'll have a set of curriculum. You'll have a schedule to follow. And you get very serious about it. This is your future, dear, and I'm doing the best for you. You know, the parents probably could be coached, and like Pam Popper has a whole consultant group that will coach parents on getting through that discussion and
Yeah,
saying this.
parenting, parents have to learn too how to parent. It's not just the child that has to learn how to learn. The parent has to learn how to parent. Like usually when something bad happens, it's like, well, where are the parents? Well, what did the parents
Exactly.
do? That's what I question often, you know?
We were being thrown some Waldorf kids that were really, really rebels, like not rebels, like, they really didn't follow, they didn't want to follow anybody's direction. They were teens, and I was working, this was up the coast a ways, and they just were going to do whatever they wanted to do because their parents had given up on them. So, oh, let's throw them into Waldorf and they'll figure it out. Well, the woman that was running the program was going crazy. It was going, and she
Yeah.
says, I've had enough of this stress. I'm about to just stop the program. And she had about 100 students, but she would have stopped it for the teen part, because we were getting a lot of troubled kids that whose parents had given up and they needed to go somewhere else. I don't know. That's why we need schools that are sports schools, performing arts schools, um, wood shop, metal shop schools, vocational schools. We need that kind of range. We've got it a little bit at the high school and middle school level. We've got some of those classes, but those are the kind of schools that some of these kids need, because they need to do something that they find interesting, which is not sitting long periods of time and writing essays. It could be, uh, creating beautiful wood sculptures, or getting
Yeah.
into the performing arts to just express themselves, and then maybe
Yeah.
go to academics, have academics half the day, and creativity the other half of the day.
I
But it
don't know
shouldn't
how
be.
bad it is now, but when I was in high school, I mean, I had to read a book about abortions, and I didn't want to read that book.
What? I never heard of
Yeah,
that. I
I
never
I
heard of that.
I know, and then the author ended up having a bunch of problems. I found out. I'm like, oh, well, why is this author getting allowed in our book in our schools? I'm like, okay, well, that was just me in high
I think
school,
it was
and
the
that was
wrong
like
choice. Yeah, it was
that was
wrong
in
choice.
2017 or whatever. My teacher's like, well, we have options, and this is like the best option I had to pick.
That's the best option, because he or she could pick something else. I was given a book that had a whole chapter devoted to Islam, and they wanted me to spend probably weeks on that. I spent an hour. And then I had another chapter in that same social studies book on all the other religions. The teacher chooses. Once you close the door, you can't just do your agenda, any old agenda, but you can pick and choose what will be interesting to the students, what's important for them. And I always said to the students, ask me why I'm teaching you this. Ask me why, because you need to know why. And I wouldn't want to teach you anything that you didn't need to know. And that's not many teachers will want to do that. They're on a schedule. They're on a
Right.
narrow. Not everybody. There's fantastic teachers out there, fantastic, but they are a minority, I'm afraid.
Hmm.
So being creative, getting those students moving, those are the two things that I always tell teachers that are starting out. Just get them up, moving once in a while. Do not, in fact, I think it is in the Finland model is a 20 minutes of learning, no, 40 minutes of learning, and then 20 minutes of recess. So every time you do a 40 minute or 30-minute segment of learning, then they need to get up and do something. Our kids get maybe 2.5 to 3 recesses a day, whereas they should get 5 or 6. That's the Finland model. And it
Hmm.
really, the students look forward to going to school more, and they're not sitting as long. There's a
Yeah.
lot to learn from other
I
countries
think
too.
I think the main reason why kids like to go to school for the most part is just the social aspect of it, of meeting other kids, and then the rest is like not really that great for them. But it's mostly that, like, oh, I have friends, there's people I can see. But I think that can be filled in through other voids, absolutely. And because you don't want to like poison the water with a drop of poison. I mean, you want the water to be fresh and you want it to all be nurturing for the child. You don't
Well,
want to have
you
some
notice,
parts poisonous and some parts not.
and you notice why middle school kids are a little bit burned out, because they are, they're sitting more perhaps. the elementary students have stations to go to.
That's
They move
true.
around in the classroom. They go to more artists. They go to more music. They go to, and
That's
you
true.
can't expect those school kids when
I
they're
like
going to
that. Yeah.
these, you know,
I still
huge, huge
remember
stations.
my days of doing that. I mean, I thought that was pretty fun, going room to room in different
Yeah, why did you
abilities.
have to change at the middle school level or the high school level? It shouldn't change.
Right.
The students want to do all sorts of different things, and so that it's all it's been a factory in my view. I got into it because I thought, because I was schooled. I got my secondary degree at UC Berkeley, and I thought, oh, this is an intelligent group of this is a smart school, and they'll get me into the government schools. That's a smart thing to do. When in fact, I should have gotten either a Montessori degree or a Waldorf degree or just an entrepreneur, opened a school myself because I had a lot of teaching background before I went to college. So, you know, they sold us a bill of goods at the government teacher level. And I really resent that because there's so much more that we could have done and so
Yeah.
much more that we should have known. So,
When I use the internet a lot to my benefit, being in this new day and age where there's the internet to research. The only problem is in the past couple of years, the censorship has gotten worse. And, if I was starting to notice some weird things toward the end of my high school, I wonder how bad it is now. I really feel bad. Like, there was something inside me that was like, man, I really want to get this information out to the kids that are in the schools, just to be like, hey, check this out when you're older, look into it in the future or something somehow. But I didn't know, I still don't know how. I don't know how to bring this information to them. I mean, you're saying to me that you can't even become a teacher now without having certain requirements. Like, that is just, it's crazy to me because it's like, are these kids ever going to understand what's being done to them or have any decision factor at all? Like, is there any way I can educate them outside of that without the internet because of all the censorship? Like, is the internet the only way I can reach their minds?
no, you can be there with them. Well, you can't. I mean, are you tutoring? Are you saying you're tutoring on the internet once in a while? Are
Well,
you?
I'm saying, like, they have to do research to find me, of course, or find
Yeah,
anyone. But
they do. Yeah.
like, if is there a way, to I don't know, just talk to the students locally, the college system. I seen the colleges and they're like, you can't come on campus unless you're a student. I'm like, okay. I'm like, could you create a club? They're like, you can't create a club unless you're a student. And it's like, you can't become a student if you don't have this. It's like, how hard is it to just get a word out, or try to start something with people your age? It's
Yeah.
tricky.
It's not easy. You say it's tricky, but I just say it's too challenging. It's
It
not
shouldn't be
easy.
like that, should it?
It should not be, but there's some dug in institutions, things are dug in. I think the bigger your world gets, well, it's too big. The world is too big. I believe in villages and communities and homesteads and
Me too.
smaller, smaller. I don't believe in these gigantic institutions. And college, I like college. It was stimulating and fun. I went to about 4 or 5 of them. I just enjoyed myself. But I didn't hear any professors telling me that I needed to think one way or the other. I just didn't sit in with those professors. That I don't know. I guess I just got lucky. I saw a lot of professors that didn't know what they were doing. And, I was in a psychodrama class and somebody was spilling their guts. And then the psychodrama teacher should have stepped in and said, no, you cannot attack this person while they're exposing their entire heart and soul. There's all kinds of classes and all kinds of psychology. And I mean, there's so much to be done. All I can say is there's so much to be done, so much to experience. But if you want to reach people and reach students, I'm a marketing person for shows for children. So, I put up flyers and I go to newspapers and then I go
Yeah.
to Craigslist and Nextdoor and Facebook. And yet Facebook is CIA run or something. I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't go there.
But you're
So,
doing your best, that's all that matters. Yeah.
you're looking for venues where, and then talk to people. And then, it's easier if you're in a smaller town or big cities. I don't know how you reach everybody that you want. You just have to get on the internet and look around, and just it takes time. And then finally, Eureka, you found 5 or 6 venues where you can reach people, and clubs where you can tap in, and somebody else tells you about something else. And it's a, you know, it sounds like you're trying to get a group together of some kind that has to do with learning. Is that what you're
Yeah,
trying
I
to?
mean, I am finding that, you're right. I mean, just by networking and meeting people, that is happening. I'm just sort of manifesting it by talking about it more with you right now.
Right,
Because
right,
I
right.
wanna make it a reality, and like you
Is
said,
it a school?
it
Or is
surprises
it,
me because when I do meet people, yeah, it's like there's scenarios where it's like, "Wow, it is coming together," and I didn't expect it, but it's because, I reached out. Um,
would you like to start a school? Is that what you're saying?
yeah, I wouldn't mind doing that. I
A
think
school of, I'm just wondering what the school of what?
of natural law, of the trivium, the old classical stuff that you were mentioning. I really like that.
Mhm.
And really just I want critical thinking. I want questions and questioning our nature.
It's a
Um,
Socratic view. Your Socratic view of teaching is to ask questions. That's Socratic learning. Yeah.
yeah, I really like that approach. I mean, because it just works in conversations with people too.
Hmm.
So I see it everywhere. Um, I want to ask you another question because this comes on to a lot of people's minds. Social media. Some people will be like, social media is like the evil of existence. It's what turns the kids into, the devil or something. I don't know. But the
I don't
social
know.
media is very dangerous. But can parents do something about social media?
Oh, well, I have never, you see, my daughter she grew up when it was just beginning. She had uh, space, what was it called? Space something, MySpace.
MySpace, yeah.
She had MySpace, and there was all this talk and trash on MySpace. I found out years later, though. I found it years later. I went, oh my gosh, no wonder she had a rough time at that particular time. She was talking trash to everybody, and then she was on gaming. She was doing gaming until 4 in the morning, and there's that whole controversy about gaming. And so all this, and this is all societal's offerings to young people, ways for them to communicate, but also ways for them to get hurt by others. I remember her crying over some kids insulting her when she was gaming, and I said, "Honey, they're out in cyberspace. You'll never see them. They're not even people." So had I not allowed her to do gaming or MySpace, would she be a happier young woman, or would she be angry at me that I was cutting her off from
Yeah.
society's offerings of communication? The parents have to make the decision themselves if they're going to take that computer and say you're using it 2 hours a day and that's tops, and they have to really lay down the law. I see little ones with phones in their hands. They're 3 years old and they've got a phone, or a 7-year-old I saw with a phone, and I just shake my head. I just don't think it's wise because they're they will get so hooked into, I need that fix of entertainment real fast right now. I need it because it has soothed them in the past. Or here, take this phone, don't cry, take the phone. And a lot of things are being learned right now with children, some children. But then there are a whole set of parents that are focusing on their particular faith and beliefs, which could be the Christian faith perhaps, and they're putting them in youth groups where students get to talk with each other about their problems. And I really believe in the youth group thing and parents giving children some sort of spiritual or nature oriented
Right.
spiritual. I believe in that. Uh, just giving them a foundation in that so that
Because
they
then they could,
really
like, look
walk
at
in.
both worlds. Yeah, I
Yeah.
totally feel you, like, because then they could be like, "Oh, well, here's the social media, it's not as fulfilling as the real life. I have a real interaction here, it's more valuable than this thing that's online." I feel like it's better not to, like, say, "Well, don't do that, like, don't go online, don't play games," because if a parent is that demanding, well, then the kid will never really face the reality of the world and how people can be mean, how people can say things online. That is just part of our reality. That being said, it's not like the child has to, like, succumb to that fate where they just get bullied all the time and have no support. Because as long as you're there, like you just did with your child, and you're like, it's okay, they're just online, they don't matter. My mom did the same thing with me because I was gaming till like 4
Oh,
a.m.
really? Oh, you
Yeah,
too. Okay.
it probably happens with a lot of people, and at least the MySpace culture back then was more less PC, because there were
Mhm.
people that's doing
Let's see.
things
That's
whatever they wanted. That's people actually miss it because of that. But anyways,
right.
um,
But
like
that
that type of
laid
freedom
the
teaches
foundation.
you.
Hmm. But they need a foundation, Corey. They need a strong
Right.
spiritual
That's what
foundation. If
matters.
they're just thrown into MySpace and Facebook and gaming without a spiritual base of, okay, why is nature so amazing and why does it keep going? It must be real and it must be what we are supposed to be doing, and we are nature, and they need to have that base, something. So, because when I walk in the forest, I'm home again, and I'm by the ocean, I'm home again, and
Yeah.
I go and sit at a screen. I'm not home, but I'm getting it. I'm getting done that I think I need to get done. But that's real. That nature, we're right in the middle of a forest here. That's real to me, and that's freedom. And it's not free to be locked into being manipulated by a screen and by people who come at you with this and that, and they're selling you.
Right.
That's why we need a media class and a law class in our high schools. We used to have a media class long ago, 20, 30 years ago. They took
Really.
it out, but kids need to know the fear that's being put into them
A
in
media
to
class.
buy, media class, the fear that's imposed upon them to buy things. And then you can look at the fear that is imposed upon you in government and the fear that is thrown at you
That's
from law
true.
enforcement. Common law, you know what that is. That's, harm, do no harm, and as well as no harm to property, no property damage, no human harm to human or animals. And that's common law. But all the statutes and codes, they are just made up by a bunch of guys sitting around deciding to do that. That's really all the statutes and codes are. And so you don't have to follow those really because you're not harming anyone. You run a red light and you get a ticket for it, but you didn't harm anyone. I mean, I'm sorry, but I sound a little radical here, but nobody got harmed when you ran that red light. But if they give you a ticket, I guess you'll not run many red lights in the future, and that'll teach you. I guess that's what they're trying to do, or they're trying to make
Yeah.
revenue, you
But
know.
that's called
So,
utilitarian morality, which means like the means justifies the ends. So like,
uh,
oh well, we can stop someone to prevent this future thing, but it's not really
maybe,
like we know.
yeah, maybe we don't know. Like
But
I
then you
love
can make a justification for anything and say, well, we need this for that. And it's like, do we really? You know,
it's just a bunch of guys sitting around deciding stuff.
for everyone
But
else, yeah.
natural law is always in place. It's always just do no harm. And I put it on the board when I sub, and I don't have to talk about respect because I say, do no harm, and then we're okay. And you don't have to spend an hour on respect because people don't understand respect because you have to build respect over time.
You know what's
I
funny? In my school in third grade, I think, or around there, there was a thing on top of my door, my teacher's door, and it said the golden rule. It was there every single day, and on top of the door, it was just the golden rule. It stood right next to the flag, so like every day we basically had to look at it. And it really stuck with me. Like I still have a vision of what it looks like in my head because it was there every day when I went into school.
And it said do no harm, or it said do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Or
Yes.
okay,
Yeah.
or do unto others before they do unto you. No, make a joke about it.
Yeah.
No, golden rule. That's what we need to live by because if people did, I think we'd have a lot less problems. But we're basically good people. Most people are good people. Like Anna Frank said, I think most people are really good at heart, and yet we have these others that are not right in the head, and people have to know that that's out there, and that's another issue that children should study, or they will be forced to study coming up. Is this the evil aspect of human beings, and it has to be
Yeah.
talked about because we haven't talked about it, and now it's gotten so out of control. It's got to
I
be
feel like it's
dealt
an
with.
imbalance. Like that's a really big point that you just mentioned because like what happens is like for example, they'll watch Disney and over fantasize about things, and then the real world hits them, and all of a sudden now they just think all of that is fake. It's all just no imagination. Now just become an atheist, It's like, or they're
Oh,
exposed to like a heavy
no.
dose of religion, and then they're like, oh, well, that's all BS. So now I should become atheist. Like they turn to different extremes because of their life experiences when it doesn't have to be that way.
No, no, it doesn't. I don't think they should close down Disney World. I used to work at Disneyland a couple of years. I was Alice in Wonderland, Corey. I worked a summer as Alice and I had a blast. But I mean, I don't want them to close down because it gives so much happiness to people, even though some of the staff members are not right in the head. I just don't think they should close down the whole happy place
Yeah.
just because of these weirdos that are in the company.
Yeah.
So, but I
And
don't think
and
they
it's
should
the
also
same
be
thing with
rebels.
like traditions or holidays, right? Like Christmas, like, oh, People will say, well, these are based on
I
faiths and
know.
things we don't know who exist, but like, so what does it matter if it doesn't harm us, if it's allowing us to look at a greater worldview? And it's up to individuals.
And
We
have
just don't
some
want
fun.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
just don't want people being imposed upon, right? And I think this is my last question, if you don't mind me asking you. Like, that whole idea of statism, which I think you're aware of, this belief in authority, or that human beings have like this vested authority. Um, One day, do you think this will ever ever get to people? Because that's the goal of this summit that we have, is to kind of bring these ideas to light that people have never really questioned before, and just get them in the conversation, to say the very least. Do you think that maybe there'll be a time where kids are questioning authority, but they're not rebelling against authority? Because when it comes to questioning authority, it's like either the kid is super obedient and follows orders, or they're like super rebellious. But no, again, like there's no middle ground, where the kid has self-direction and recognizes that there's influencers who don't have authority, but they influence their lives and they own themselves, but they're supposed to work together.
Well, it's not hard to figure out that there are people with virtues that you want to follow because you respect that they are good virtues, that they're kind and they're not harming others. And it's not difficult to figure out when someone is following an unethical order, which you're not supposed to do in the military. They call it something else, but you just don't follow an unethical order which harms others. That's not hard. And you can figure out who you're going to respect and look up to and listen to, and then you're not going to listen to the one that's harming others. I mean, isn't that logic and good thinking?
Yeah.
So we have leaders that are like Stalin, who's getting rid of the whole population of the Ukraine way back in the 50s. And we're going to listen to this guy after he, kept food from all those people? No. But we're going to listen to Martin Luther King because he led people, towards civil rights in 1964, our Civil Rights Act, which you don't discriminate against others, especially those who are unvaxxed and not masked. You don't discriminate against
Well,
those people.
also
So let
like,
them begin.
but also like Martin Luther
No,
King wasn't
people,
seeking power. Like, he was influencing people. He was making motivational speeches. Stalin was over here with his armed gang of people, and they're like,
exactly.
follow
No.
orders or else. It's
But
like a
look at how powerful Martin Luther King was because they shot him because the
mm,
CIA made sure he was gone.
the
He
truth
was
speaks
very
louder.
powerful in a very beautiful, respectful way, and so and they even admitted to it. Actually, his wife, Corinne, she made they there was a whole trial, and the government admitted that they had assassinated him. I don't know if you know about that. It's very little
No.
known, but it's out there, and they admitted to it, and she got a particular amount of award for what is it, punitive damages or whatever, loss of a great man, but lives forever. The whole idea of his civil rights for all lives
Civil
forever,
disobedience. Yeah.
and that's acceptable if you're not harming anyone. But these other people that were burning buildings all over your area too, I think there was a lot of burnings. That's harm to property, that's property damage and harm to human beings. And so it's not difficult for children to figure out who to respect and who to listen to and who not to, and turn tail and go because I did see a little guy really kicking a police officer. He's about 6 years old. It was on a little TikTok deal, but he was kicking him, and the fellow who was commentator said, "Where are the parents? Where are the parents?" Because they had taught this little boy that you don't respect police, and some police are brutal, some are not. So parents do need to reel their children in and not teach them some things like hate all policemen or hate all government officials or hate. They're the parents also have to do some learning. It's not just our children we have to teach. Some parents have to be taught that
Yeah.
there is a difference between ethical people and totally unethical following orders people. And
Yeah.
there's plenty of the others. So
Right. And the way I look at it is like, beneath that badge, beneath that uniform, is a human being. And if they don't respect me as a human being, then yes, I'm going to say all cops are bad. But that's as a cop. But as a human being, I'm not going to say they're bad, because they're just living a different experience in life. But the problem is, as a cop, it's like you are presuming a certain role. So, you know, my position could be seen as extreme, but yet am I extreme to say they're just a human being and that they're just like everyone else? And it's funny to me that you say like kids can understand harm. I feel like most adults can't even understand harm sometimes.
Oh, I guess I'm looking at children a different way than adult. I didn't even think of adults, but you're right. You're right about that. They don't recognize it, but they didn't have a great upbringing. Perhaps they missed a lot of learning along the way too. And they maybe they were in these government schools. I don't really know, but everybody needs to learn. Everybody needs to learn every day. There's something new to learn every day,
Right.
and you can't ever cut yourself off to learning, but some people do. But we keep trying, and teachers, we keep hoping and trying. But my future is that I will open a performing arts school, or I'll open a theater, or I'll do something that is a wonderful experience for children and adults and for everyone. That's just my kind of thing. I'll do it eventually. Right now I'm just kind of hunkering down a little bit,
Yeah.
but I do believe in absolute freedom. If there was no freedom, I've experienced absolute no freedom, and I won't even talk about that, but I've experienced it. It's just horrible. And so, it was slavery. And so freedom is everything. And so is nature. So I think maybe you
Thank you.
could change the title of your channel. Freedom and nature is the answer.
No, nature includes freedom. Nature includes
That's
everything.
right. That's right. I think so too.
Thank
But
you.
yeah, it's
You really
great talking.
encapsulate the message very well, and I appreciate you for that. I just want to say that real quick, because it's
Sure.
something. It's like it goes overlooked often. Like, oh, nature, it's this thing. It's like, no, to me, it's very powerful, and it's probably the most powerful thing ever. Otherwise, I wouldn't say it's the answer. So,
Yeah. Yeah, it
um,
is. Yeah. It's good
thank
to
you.
talk to you, Troy. Good
Yeah,
to talk
thank
to
you
you.
so much
Great.
for joining us. We were
Yeah,
around 1 hour or so, so I appreciate
sure.
it. And if
Good.
you have any other resources, please feel free to share with everybody. I encourage everybody. Do you have any links or any resources that you want people to follow your work at, or anything in
Well,
particular?
mine is just three W's the drama school, and it's just some of the things that I go anywhere and teach my classes anywhere in the world, and so it's just a little humble site. I haven't really developed it very much, but that I don't have curriculum to send people. They have to do their own discovery and their own whatever they think is right for their child, because
Yeah,
maybe they won't be academically heavy. Maybe they'll do they have science heavy information because their child is interested in that. Maybe they'll be math heavy. Maybe
right.
it'll be all acting for a while and singing, and maybe then next week they'll do academics. I mean, that's the freedom of curriculum and of having your own school with your child. Yeah,
Yeah. Well,
freedom.
thank you. You shared a lot of great resources. I recommend everybody checks out
Sure.
a lot of things that you talked about. And I think I'd like the fact that we kind of mentioned Martin Luther King Jr. And I would like to say that I haven't made a video really dedicated to them, but there's a lot of individuals throughout history that deserve the recognition for their bravery and their disobedience that was very peaceful as well.
Yes,
Gandhi,
we're
um,
finding out.
Bob Marley as well, right? And there's
Mhm.
a lot of people, and they also happen to get targeted, but they really taught people, they inspired the cultures, they changed a lot, and that just shows you how powerful education can be in through many different means, like music and art and a lot of things we talked about.
And
So
that's your emotional intelligence as well as your IQ. Emotional intelligence is a really big topic too. That's huge. But there's other people that are going to come out, Corey, that we've never heard of that have been suppressed. More heroes are going to surface. You will see. So
great.
good to talk to you, and
Thank
have a
you.
lovely evening, day, week. Okay.
Thank you
Good to
very
talk to you.
much. Thank you. Everybody, if you want to see a lot more talks like this and a lot more speakers, go to nita.one/summit, nita.one/summit. This is the End of Slavery Summit. Thank you very much for watching. Take care.